Thank you, Dean Braun. I'd like to also thank the panelists for coming and the folks at MIT Enterprise Forum to help organizing, specifically Eric Vieira and Mary Howard. I'm I'm a professor here at Pace University and the director of the Entrepreneurship Program, and I'm on the board of the MIT Enterprise Forum here in New York City and served on the global board. So in looking at New York City's recovery from not only 9/11, but more recently from the financial crisis of 2008, I was always interested in how New York has come back so quickly and built this entrepreneurial ecosystem that we have. I think that there's a lot of things to take credit. I think the Mayor Bloomberg deserves a lot of credit. He's been a real pragmatist and has really put in a strategy. But it's much broader than one person. There's, again, this idea of an ecosystem. And when you think, what exactly is the ecosystem, there's all kinds of things. There's soft things like the quality of life. I mean, living in New York City, in 1973 instead of 2013, 30 years ago was very, very different. And, the perception of desirability of wanting to be here in New York City, has changed and adds to the ecosystem. So there's things that always come to mind as well, the availability of funding, access to capital. There's things that you might not think of that much, like networking organizations, for example, the MIT Enterprise Forum, Tech Meetup, et cetera. There's big things like having really talented people, engineers and a technical workforce. There's little things like access to, high-speed internet, now these days called the fourth utility. The local government, cutting red tape, federal government, immigration policy, is a big thing. So there's all kinds of factors that influence the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Again, federal, state, local government, nonprofit organizations, advocacy groups, private firms, large corporations that you just heard the dean talk about, a number of them, small and medium-sized enterprises, individual entrepreneurs, solo professionals, customer partners, suppliers, all of these things make up part of our ecosystem. And of course, tonight's focus is on the role of universities in that ecosystem. And I think there's things that come to mind, when you say what role do universities play, things like tech transfer and of course, providing an education to students to be able to fill these positions, skilled positions in this knowledge workforce. But there's many, many other things as well. And the universities, and that could go from like P-Tech or Pathways in Technology, what does it stand for? Pathways in Technology, Early College, High School, which is part of like the Board of Education in Cooney, all the way to the new campus that's being opened for Cornell NYC Tech on Roosevelt Island. What I'm particularly excited about tonight's panel is we have a mixture of the different universities. So, we have a design school, a Columbia University with tech, Mount Sinai Medical School, and New York City Economic Development Corp, which of course has been, instrumental in fostering, our very successful entrepreneurial ecosystem here in New York City. I just thought I'd, to open, read, there's a book that just came out, I read it, I really enjoyed it. It's called Tech in the City, Making of New York City Startup Community. Is Alessandro here, by the way? Okay, he said that he was going to try to come. So, Chapter 18, A Virtuous Cycle, How Academia is Interacting with Startups. And let me just read this. In Silicon Valley, Stanford plays a big role in stabilizing the economic cycle, constantly going up and down, adds the co-founder, Eric Korth, who's one of the co-founders of HackNY and a professor of computer science at New York University. He goes on to say, something we did wrong the first time around in the 90s was not having strong connective tissue between the startup community and academic institutions. We don't have Stanford here, but we have a bunch of really strong universities that combined are much bigger than Stanford. And I don't just mean NYU and Columbia. I mean Cooney, Parsons, Pace, Cornell, and then looking to the bigger circle, I think of Syracuse, Carnegie Mellon, and all of these other schools. We must pull them together to strengthen the connections to the startup community. So, again, the book Tech in the City, it was, just published in March of last year. So with that, I wanted to ask each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll go into some questions, and we'll save some time at the end for questions from the audience.